Hey everyone, did you know, be it small, compact commuter cars or large gas-guzzling SUVs, there are many different types of vintage cars that people drive every day. Today, we're going to take a look at some of the most well-known and well-liked vintage cars of all time. Here are the top 15 most successful vintage cars. Number 15. Aston Martin DB5. When it comes to the silver screen, few cars have gotten quite as much attention as the Aston Martin DB5. After all, while Bentleys were James Bond's favorite car in the novels, it was the Aston Martin DB5 that became synonymous with 007 in the movies. Interestingly enough, this connection was almost not made at all. After all, when Goldfinger was being produced in 1964, the directors essentially had to beg Aston Martin for a loan on one of their cars, as the idea of product placement hadn't really been introduced to Hollywood yet. However, after a lot of prodding, Aston Martin eventually caved, and from this deal, the incredible James Bond car has given Aston Martin an incredible amount of positive publicity ever since. Number 14. Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing. As far as innovative luxury cars go, the Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing is nothing short of impressive. Famous for taking a large six-cylinder engine that was typically used in limousines and stuffing it into its small body, it took the racing scene by storm in the 1950s, as features such as a lighter frame, lower center of gravity, and fast acceleration put it over the edge. However, it's probably its stylistic features that were even more impactful. You see, because of the light frame, it was impossible to fit conventional doors without sacrificing stability, and this meant that its doors instead had to open upwards. This created the iconic gullwing doors that continue to be used in various models to this very day. And as a result, the Mercedes 300 SL truly is a pioneer in automotive history. Number 13. Military Jeeps. If you've ever watched MASH, then you're well aware of the enduring legacy of military Jeeps. They were first produced for the Army in 1941. Between then and the end of the war, a total of 650,000 were produced, which for those with quick division skills amounts to an impressive figure of nearly 500 per day. Costing about $650 a pop to produce, which for reference was the price of about 3 machine guns, the Jeep gave the US Army a lot of bang for its buck. It's an absolute workhorse. These 900-kilogram four-wheel drive vehicles would be able to perform well in practically every terrain, as they served in the jungles of the Pacific, deserts of North Africa, and cold swamps of Eastern Europe. And while it's no longer used in the modern day as part of the United States' standing army, the military Jeep stands as a symbol of American ingenuity. Number 12. Toyota Corolla. Okay, now while the Toyota Corolla may not strike you as a vintage car, it in fact traces its origins all the way back to the 1960s. You see, development of the first-generation Corolla began in the latter half of 1962, and the main challenges the design team faced surrounded the feat of trying to make the car both affordable and luxurious. Fit with a semi-fastback design and using an innovative type of paint coating that kept it looking better for longer, it took the quality-obsessed Japanese market by storm, and soon the Corolla began to be shipped off to foreign countries. Over time, increases in the number of doors, power of the engine, and overall safety features improved its status in the eyes of consumers, while major design changes every 4 or 5 years have ensured that the car is modern and up-to-date with the latest motor trends. As such, it's not hard to see why this once retro car has continued to be a household name and bestseller year after year. Number 11. The Ford Mustang. When it comes to bang for your buck, few cars give you as much value and beauty as the Ford Mustang. It was originally launched in 1964 for about $2,300, and even by the standards of the 1960s, it was an inexpensive car, and in fact its price tag was so low that people were actually bidding up the price in dealerships as soon as they came out. It's well loved for its sleek design. It was one of the first mass-produced vehicles that could legitimately be used on the racetrack, as its lightweight combined with its powerful 335 horsepower V8 engine allowed it to easily win races against many other cars of its day. Over time, it got slightly bigger and flashier, and as the years went by, it continuously adapted its design and features in order to better suit the latest trends and sensibilities. As such, the modern rendition of the Mustang looks far different than its retro counterpart, yet the original nevertheless continues to maintain a special place in the hearts of many young motoring enthusiasts. Number 10. The Cadillac DeVille. If you happen to have a solid stack of cash in the latter half of the 19th century, then there's a pretty fair chance that you had a Cadillac DeVille at some point or another. First hitting the market in 1949, the DeVille was Cadillac's luxury sedan and a favorite among everyone from major politicians to the Hollywood elite. Visually appealing thanks to its distinctive roofline, deck-lid beauty panels, and jewel-like grille pattern, it was a beauty in terms of its aesthetics. While its powerful 6.4-liter 325-horsepower engine and useful features such as power steering, power brakes, backup lamps, and automatic transmission made it a practical option as well. Over the years, changes such as a wider grille, the addition of storage space, and an extension that made the car so wide that it set an interior width record made it the perfect luxury vehicle. However, by the 1990s, the car looked far less luxurious than it did in previous generations, and this, along with several other external factors, led to sales declining so much that by the year 2005, this iconic car was completely phased out. Number 9. Fiat 500. Italy is a place that's known for its narrow medieval roads and tight mountain passages, and so it makes sense that when the Fiat 500 was launched in 1957, it was an absolute hit. You see, throughout the 1950s, car manufacturers were attempting to create small, affordable cars that could be sold to Europeans in the post-World War II era. This sparked the creation of the Fiat 500, as its small frame 500cc engine and cost of around 490,000 lira, which for reference was equivalent to about 13 months of the average worker's salary, made it an affordable yet useful option. Known as the first city car, models like it soon began to pop up in an attempt to replicate its roaring success, as in addition to its great design extras such as its low fuel consumption and great handling made it a super fun car to drive. It was with this incredible design that Fiat manufactured millions of these small yet mighty vehicles, and while the original model was unfortunately discontinued in 1975, similar models that still use the 500 in the model number continued to be made to this very day. Number 8. Volkswagen Bus. If you're in tune with hippie culture, then you've most definitely heard of the Volkswagen Bus. While the vehicle first got its start in the 1950s as the Type 1, by the late 1960s, Volkswagen had come out with the more innovative Type 2, and it quickly captured the hearts of younger Americans. Designed in stark contrast to the diesel-guzzling, flashy, and loud cars coming out of Detroit, the microbus, as it would come to be called, was a countercultural symbol, as its simple style and ability to be adapted as a sort of an RV, camper, or hangout spot made it a symbol of protest against the rampant consumerism of the day. Its boxy appearance also made it stand out physically from most other cars, and by 1969 it featured prominently in hippie culture, often being painted and decked out with hippie symbols and iconography to create what was known as a hippie bus. However, as the countercultural movement began to fade away in the 1980s, so did interest in the microbus, and in 2014 production of it fully ceased. However, the Volkswagen Bus is set to be relaunched in electric vehicle form in 2024, and I hope that it will be just as popular as it was in the past. It's just a cool little vehicle. Number 7. Citroën 2CV. After World War II, France had a long way to go to build itself back up after the terrors of war, and the introduction of the Citroën 2CV arguably helped to jumpstart that process. Now, the 2CV was first conceived in the late 1930s, when the engineers at Citroën were given a very special design brief of creating a car that could carry up to 4 people and 50 kilograms of goods, while traveling at a speed of 48 kilometers per hour across muddy and unpaved roads. In fact, it was even suggested that during the prototype stage, that the car should be able to carry a basket of eggs across a plowed field at speeds of about 130 kilometers per hour without causing any to crack. And while all of these preconditions may seem a bit crazy, Citroën managed to pull it off. As a result, when the car debuted, it instantly garnered a 5-year wait list, and despite not being the fastest or the most high-tech, its style, good handling, and soft ride even on the toughest of roads made it a fan favorite very quickly. However, in the late 1980s, changes in European emissions standards essentially caused it to be banned in several countries, and while changes could have been made to fix those issues, Citroën simply decided to throw in the towel and completely cease production of the 2CV in 1990. Number 6. The Hindustan Ambassador. Okay, while most iconic vehicles were manufactured in the United States or Europe, the Hindustan Ambassador is an important Indian contribution to the global car market. Now, the Hindustan Ambassador first got its start in the UK, where it was manufactured by Morris Motors Limited. However, in 1956, the rights to build the car were sold to Hindustan Motors, and after some design changes, they introduced the car to the Indian market in 1958. Equipped with a new front end, a large amount of space relative to its size, and a sleek semi-monocoque body, it took the Indian market by storm, as it was an affordable option that could brave India's challenging roads while also standing as a symbol of Indian manufacturing. Over time, India's relatively protected, closed market incentivized Hindustan Motors to essentially maintain the same design, and so when India opened up its car manufacturing business to Suzuki in 1981, the Ambassador's sales quickly began to plummet. And while certain moves such as the government's decision to make it an official car of the state employees helped prop up the Ambassador, it began to face a gradual decline, and changes such as a loss of government contracts and the inability to quickly meet environmental emission standards in the mid-2000s, they were the final nail in the coffin. So in 2014, it was completely pulled from the market, marking an end to an outstanding career on Indian roads. Number 5. The Lada Riva. When it comes to high-quality consumer goods, the Soviet Union wasn't exactly a standout. However, one of the most iconic things to come out of one of their factories was the Lada Riva. Considered to be one of the longest-running four-wheelers still on the road today, the car stands apart for being the third best-selling car of all time after the Volkswagen Beetle and the Ford Model T. However, despite this, few people in the West know about it, and the reasons for this are mainly due to its complete inability to break into the North American market. You see, when the Riva came out in the Soviet Union in 1970, they became highly sought after due to their affordability. However, since Lada could not pump them out fast enough, people often waited on lists for years in order to receive one. Once they did, they treasured it, and since the Soviet Union didn't have many car options, it soon became the state's most popular vehicle. Yet, despite their popularity, they were notoriously unreliable, and while they were actually very easy to fix if something went wrong, when the international car market came to the former Soviet republics in the 1990s, the Lada Riva took a back seat. However, despite this influx of cheaper, better-made cars, the Riva has still continued to have a solid piece of market share, as despite looking like an unimpressive box, it's remained an important part of Lada's lineup. And while it has been eclipsed by newer models, the Lada Riva still stands as a testament to Soviet engineering. Number 4. Hoover carts and Bennett buggies. While absolutely no one would want to own a Hoover cart or a Bennett buggy today, for much of the 1930s they were North America's most popular type of car, largely out of necessity. You see, when the Great Depression hit in October of 1929, millions of people lost their jobs, and as a result, those people often no longer had the money to afford to run their cars. In response, they would often take their cars and remove heavy or redundant parts such as the engine, the windshields, and the windows to lighten the vehicle's weight. And once they did so, they would strap the vehicle to a pair of horses and use it like a horse and buggy. Now, these strange vehicles were called Hoover carts in the United States and Bennett buggies in Canada in a nod to their country's respective leaders, as many people blamed them for getting their countries into the Depression. In any case, they became very popular in rural areas, largely thanks to the fact that many rural farmers had made lots of money and bought a car in the 1920s, only to lose it all in the stock market crash and be stuck with something they could not afford in the 1930s. And it was thanks to this that this archaic form of transport proved to be the only sensible way to get around. However, by the late 1930s, improvements in economic conditions meant that these vehicles began to see less and less use, and by the World War II era, they essentially went extinct. So therefore, while these vehicles were successful in the sense that many people used them, it was certainly for the best that they didn't last any longer than they did. Number 3. Volkswagen Beetle. Now, when it comes to iconic cars, few can compete with the Volkswagen Beetle. It was first launched in 1938 in Germany by Ferdinand Porsche, and it was commissioned by Adolf Hitler in order to give the German people an affordable yet reliable car. Directly translating to people's car in English, the Beetle managed to be just that, as this two-door car with an air-cooled engine stood apart thanks to its great gas mileage and efficient use of materials. However, once World War II began in 1939, production nearly ground to a halt, as only German military officials were able to buy them. However, once the British took over Volkswagen's manufacturing facilities after the war, they quickly began to make Beetles once more in order to spur German economic activity, while creating cheap cars for their fellow countrymen back home. As a result, they soon began to soar in popularity across Europe, and in 1949 they were brought to the United States. Here, their modest size and teardrop shape made them stand out against the flashy American gas guzzlers that were popular during this era. While this could have been a recipe for failure, the fact that they were different resonated with American consumers, and by the late 1960s, the Beetle soon began to cross generational lines. This is because while older people liked it for its reliability and affordability, hippies began to buy it because it was unpretentious and good on gas, and soon it became one of America's most popular cars. However, by the 1980s, competition from Japan began to lower its sales, and while a change in design in the 2000s gave it some temporary respite, findings that the car had cheated on diesel examinations in 2015 led to a precipitous decline in sales. As a result, by 2018, the Beetle made up just 4% of Volkswagen's total sales, and in 2019, the model was completely shelved, marking the end of a long and mostly fuel-efficient history. Maybe one day we'll see it come back. Number 2. Ford Model T. While the Ford Model T wasn't the first car ever invented, it was the first to see widespread production. Now, the Model T first began with the Model A, which, after facing several difficulties, was consistently changed, one letter in the alphabet at a time, until Ford got to the Model T. Made in order to be both simple to operate and durable, it stood apart from other cars available at the time due to it having a simple 20-horsepower four-cylinder engine that could be operated using gasoline, kerosene, or ethanol, which really widened the market in terms of who could use it, thanks to the fact that fuels like kerosene were much more common than the other two in rural areas. So when it launched in 1908, it had all the nuts and bolts necessary to be a commercial success. However, since most people didn't even know what a car was, or if they did, had no experience driving, and so consumers had to be convinced that buying a Model T was a smart move. This was done by making it so it could be adapted to double as an agricultural vehicle such as a tractor, increasing its usefulness. It was also made in a wide range of body styles, with these including gray 6-seat town cars, red and green 5-seat touring cars, and smaller 2-seaters in a wide range of colors. By 1910, Ford was having trouble keeping up with demand, and so in order to ensure that production could be efficient, he essentially invented the moving assembly line. In essence, he had every worker complete one part of the job of making a car, and in tandem, those workers became so good at their roles that cars went from taking 12 hours to build to just 90 minutes. It was in this fashion that Ford popped out a Model T right up until 1927, making it a true pioneer in the field of car production. Number 1. The Mini Cooper. While the Mini Cooper is arguably an inferior cousin of the Fiat 500 in the eyes of some car enthusiasts, it is nonetheless the British take on the incredible design concept known as the city car. More specifically, city cars are small vehicles that are meant to be affordable, light on gas, and easy to use in the context of narrow roads of a city. And interestingly enough, the Mini Cooper first began as a design challenge of sorts for Sir Leonard Lord of the Morris Company and his top engineer. You see, in the wake of super high gas prices thanks to the Suez Crisis, he wanted to create a car that was small, fuel-efficient, and capable of carrying 4 adults, and affordable for the average consumer too. This was achieved thanks to a major stylistic innovation. More specifically, the engineers decided to create more room in the cockpit by pushing the wheels all the way out to the corners and turning the engine sideways. This in turn gave the car more stability in tight situations and more passenger space on the sides, allowing them to create a smaller car that was so space efficient that it didn't feel as small as it looked. Now, when the car first came out in 1959, it certainly shocked the British public, yet their low-cost, small size, fun, and nimble package caused younger generations to fall in love with its design and performance. This in turn led to pickup and station wagon versions of the car being made, and as a result, the Mini Cooper soon began to become a sensation across Europe. In fact, by 1999, over 5 million Mini Coopers had been sold, and this helped lead a panel of 130 international automotive journalists to vote for the Mini to be the European car of the century. Nowadays, the Mini continues to be a well-loved car, as design changes such as a slight size upgrade and the addition of some subtle luxury features have ensured that it will continue to have a place in the hearts and minds of car owners for the foreseeable future.
Watch our Vehicles playlist for more top 15 videos about amazing vehicles. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best vehicle videos.